Good to share the time. We're on LinkedIn here, Facebook, X, YouTube. And if you're watching us on YouTube or Facebook, X, or any of the other platforms, head over to head over to LinkedIn. We're going to take questions over there. I'm talking about AI, automations, and the state of this technological experience we're moving through and what it means to our business. And I have a webinar coming up, so I want to talk about what that means and get some early discussion and questions for how we show up for that webinar. So let me do this and get to the stream here so I can see any questions that may come through. I want to talk about what do you guys think about when you think about ChatGPT, AI, what this means for your business, what questions do you have for it? And I want to take your questions live. I'm going to hang out with you guys for a little bit. And really what I'm doing is I sent out an email today. Some of you got it. A lot of you registered, but we're looking at getting in front of the pre-discussion for what we do at the webinar. So I'd love to do that. So what are you guys thinking when it comes to ChatGPT, AI? Are you using this technology today? Sorry, I'm trying to get to my my stream here, and it's not showing me. I want to make sure I can see your questions as they come in. Say hello in the chat, just so I know that you're there, and I will make sure that I address. Man, goodness, hang on. Oh, you know what it is? We're on the business page here, and I do see some of the I'm trying to learn how to put it in action. Helen, thank you for that. I'm going to give me a second. I'll get rolling here in a minute. We'll have a lot to talk about. We do have the webinar coming up. I'm going to put the webinar thing on the page just while I try and get this. You know what I'm in the app. Gosh, I did this the other day and I was able to see the questions very easily, and now does anybody else notice that of all the social networks, when you go to LinkedIn, like just to see somebody's post, it's like nearly impossible? Does anybody else experience that, or is that just me? Here we go. Let's see. I still don't see it. You know what I'm going to do? You guys are going to have to, there we go. I see, not yet, but I'm trying to figure out how to integrate. Okay, Jake, thank you. I can see those questions as they come in. And Jeremy, I see you. Perfect. Awesome. All right. Well, I'll just get rolling here. And if you're on, it looks like one of those comments came over from YouTube. So there's a lot of confusion too about how I believe this technology can be leveraged for your own personal success, your business success, and I think ultimately how the customers experience something new. And you know, it's interesting because depending on what circle you're in and what information you're paying attention to, you're either highly consumed by it or you're just so busy blocking and tackling, doing the fundamental basic things in the business that require attention today in an uncertain and fast changing environment that you don't even have time to learn something new, because what's right in front of us is the customer and maybe the complaint, or you know, whatever that may be that's going on in your business. So I know that sometimes it's hard to step off and take a moment to learn And sometimes when we do things, we learn by doing and experiencing it versus just consuming information, right? And so I see a lot of information circling around this conversation. And honestly, what I'd like to do is elevate this conversation a bit in that I want to be able to have the multifamily industry. There's there was a time when the internet came along, and I'll just back up and give you a little bit more context. I mean, I was scripting PHP code, doing server-side includes, building websites when I was running properties. And I would do that because I saw the internet as like rent. I saw recurring revenue as rent. And sometimes you can see that rent from properties, in order to get rent, you'd have to build the property, get debt, get equity, do all these things to get recurring revenue. And early on in my career, I noticed and became curious about the internet. This was way back. So don't date me on this, but I had a business that I was involved or started. And what I did was so at the time it was like everybody didn't know they needed a website. And so, it was like you would say, well, you need this website, but then you'd have to coordinate with a designer, and they would make it in Photoshop or Dreamweaver, which is way back at software. And then you would need to coordinate a web host and then a programmer to kind of tie all this up. And there was a lot of like setup fees, right? So you're working with freelancers in different departments. And because of the friction there, nobody did that. And they relied on an ILS to be their website. So a customer would call and say, hey, I'm interested in your apartment. And then they would say, do you have a website? And people would say, yeah, go to forrent.com or whatever it was, right? And so you're literally sending them into a competition zone. And my vision was like, you need to have your own domain. you need to have your own thing. And so you don't want to send people to where there's competition. And so I was just learning about all this stuff, hacking away at PHP and learning all this stuff. And ultimately, one thing I want everybody to understand, and what I've experienced, is that it's all about increasing the value you provide to others, right? So if you know things, then you can provide value. If the thing that you know can be more profitable, more efficient, make the business better, that's significant. I know that there was a lot of long nights studying and just figuring out code and getting in developer groups and figuring out how to make things work. And I just became curious about it. And so I've blended sort of real estate and this technology. And I've used all that stuff to build my brand over the years, in automating most everything in our business. And you look at in property, the dishwasher is automation, right? Does anybody think that's really special today? I mean, it was like it probably cleans it better, right? And it will make life better, right? And there was a time when people didn't think they needed dishwashers in apartments. Today they do. And so living through this process, one of the things I did was I built 20 websites for a company I worked for. And what I did was I took the risk away from them. And I said, you know what, I'm going to absorb the design cost. I'm going to absorb the hosting. I'm going to absorb the programming, the coding, and make it scalable with, at this time, it was like PHP includes, which meant that, you'd have header, footer, left panel, footer, and you'd be able to make changes without redesigning a brochure online, because a lot of people were just building, they were seeing the world as print and brochures, and like, how can we make that online? And I was looking at it from a tech code standpoint to scale it to apartment communities throughout the country. And so in that process, what I learned is I would go to even the company I worked for, and I'm like, I have this thing, and it can make us rent faster. I think it'll give our leasing agents more opportunity, and we could lower our advertising costs, on and on. And it was like, yeah. What do we need to, and the leaders didn't really know a different world, right? And so I'm trying to sell into that. But what was fascinating is because I was hacking out and figuring out how to make all this work, is I found this open source script, and this script was like for which open source just means a community of developers build it, and then you can make it your own, and you host it, and you can make it work the way you want to work it and add other things to it. And what I did was we were at the time, this is way back when, they were doing manual guest cards, right? So somebody came in and our company had the policy like, you got to follow up, got to follow up. Follow up is still a problem today. And you got to follow up, got to follow up. And when I found out was, a lot of people didn't follow up. Those that did rented more apartments. We did better. And they would handwrite them, stamp them, mail them. I mean, literally old school. And I'm like, what if I could make like an e-card system that our leasing agents can just log into and send an email follow-up. So it was literally an e-card, okay? But why I tell you this is because when I was selling at that time a website, nobody wanted it or didn't think they needed it. And this was the early days of like the internet coming on, right? But when I brought the e-card thing, they're like, yeah, I'll take that. I want that. And so we're like, well, okay, well, we'll put that in with this. And so sometimes we have to look at technology as not that people don't want it. You guys may be building it, or there may be people building it that get excited about it because they see what it can do, but the customer might not always see that. And so, but they want their problem to go away, or they want like more rents, or they want to go faster, more efficiently, whatever that may be. And so when I talked about this e-card thing, and we could take your follow-ups can happen, 10 minutes after they leave the property, it was like, yes, I'll take that and I made it easy for them to get it. We built it, we deployed it, and it was easy to train. And then we did. I mean, I had recurring revenue for I don't know how many years for that service on that one problem that we solved. And the reality is, it's not that AI and automation and technology is what we need. It's still business fundamentals. It's still people want their businesses to succeed. They want their businesses to grow, and they want their people to enjoy working there. And those are the outcomes to the customer experiences. And so we have to continually think about, it's not enough to just know anymore. It's not enough to think it's important. It's not enough to just be to buy something. It's that we have to buy it, and we have to set the vision and get the leadership capability in motion so that the thing that we do makes the business better. It's never just the thing, right? And so I'm seeing a lot of trends of what I went through in the early days of just seeing the internet go from print to online and all that stuff. I'm seeing that now. And there's the difference now, though, is there's a lot more voices to talk about what we know. And what I know is that, as a professional industry, we have to hold a high standard for what is true. And it needs to be true for the individual that's buying the product or using the product. We can say something is great. I can say, this is a great thing over here. And it may very well be a great thing over here for company A that's set up this certain way. But it's not a great thing over here for company B that's structured a different way, that has different timelines with different LP investors and a different business objective. So, and I've said this before publicly, is like, if you were to go to the doctor and the doctor said and prescribed medicine before they did a thorough diagnosis, X-ray, MRI, sent you to rehab first, tried all these things, all the diagnostic things, taking the blood, all that stuff before they just started offering solutions, it would be malpractice in medicine. And so for us, it's very important where we get our information. We need to look at, you know, how the person sharing information, did they build anything? Did they, did they implement it and get it to work in a business, right? Because a lot of times it's just it's fatiguing to see the amount of energy and just conversations around noise around what is possible in scenario A and scenario B. But nobody knows until you get into a conversation specifically for you and your business. So I would love to take any questions that you guys have. I'm doing a webinar. I'll put that link back up here in a minute. I'm doing a webinar coming up Friday. And I'm going to go in and share and give live examples of some things that I believe are really compelling, that are going to make a difference financially in a business and from the experience standpoint in the business. And I want to be able to, on that, I'm going to be, one-to-one with you guys, and I'm going to screen share, and we're going to go through some stuff and show you the things that I've implemented and looked at, and make that an opportunity for you. It's a free webinar, obviously. And real life case examples of things in multifamily, not just, AI and how it's going to impact the world. I want to specifically talk about multifamily. Let's see. Do you guys have any so what are you thinking about? Like, what does generative AI mean to you? Are you excited about it? Do you think it's disruptive? Do you think it's here to stay? Like, what are your feelings and thoughts around generative AI? I'd love to kind of go through that with you and see what your thoughts are. If you're listening to me now, take a minute and put in the chat and let me know, hey, that you're here. Hey, I'm so and so, and I'm watching, and I'd love to know this. What do you think about this? Or AI is going to change the way we do this. Whatever that may be, I'm curious. What you say. So Larry says it's here to stay. Yes, it is. And boy, is it fast moving, right? It is hard to keep up. And that's the exciting part, because I think it's leveling the playing field for our skills. Before we work and hold all this knowledge, but now there's supreme access to knowledge, right? So what's that going to mean for us? How are we going to re-envision how we work? Jason, anyone who doesn't get up to speed will be left behind in 36 months' time. You think it's 36 months? I agree. I mean, I think who knows? It could be faster, right? I mean, it depends on a lot of things, right? I mean, I think you're seeing some natural pressures, from interest rates to operating models, and then the whole world of work and how people and where they work has changed. And so there's just a lot going on right now, and it's interesting to see it all unfold. All right, Derek, let's see what you have here. Would love to explore how AI can take automated workflows to the next level, truly personalizing client journeys according to real-time needs and wants. All right. So Derek, first of all, I will specifically show you how on the webinar. I would love to continue that. Oh, I love that comment, Jason. Yes. So let's just go with Derek, what you're talking about. Love to explore how AI can take automated workflows to the next level. So, there's a big conversation around business models, and there's a big conversation around how people will work, and will people want employees involved in certain interactions, if it be sales, or will they want to just like have a self-guided tour and things like that, right? So you're familiar with that conversation. This is also happening with B2B. So vendors and owners and operators don't always need to be in a sales conversation to learn about stuff. So, but I think what you're talking about, Derek, there is the with generative AI knowing what it knows about communication and summarizing and working in between point solutions and workflows, it can create an amazing personalized experience. It doesn't even, it's not something where you're going to ChatGPT and you're like, I need to send an email. What do I say? That's active and that's more like consumer focused. I'm talking about bringing it to the business, and like Spotify did. Spotify has an app in the App Store for iOS, right? And Android and all that. And so they, at the end of the year, they do this thing called Rewind, or I can't remember what it is. Someone will put in the comments what it really is. But the point there is Spotify a place to listen to music, or is it data that's differentiated? Because I have Apple Music also in my phone, or right, mobile device. And at the end of the year, I didn't see a lot of people sharing Apple Music stuff. I saw a lot of people sharing and doing marketing for Spotify, sharing how they shared time and almost making it like, hey, this is my artists, and now you have people connecting at new levels in friendships. Like, oh, you like that artist? That's amazing. That's great. Are you listening to this podcast? That's great. And the reality is that's because of data. And so the large language models, this is like the chat GPTs, it's a race to zero, right? It's just a race to, it's like the dishwasher, right? Everyone has one. It's no longer different when everybody has the same information, right? So when you combine your data, your company data, your experience together with the large language models, I believe that's where the magic's going to be created. And you saw like the data with Spotify. It's an easy example on how to use it to personalize something. And that can happen in a workflow, Derek. That can happen in a workflow. It doesn't have to happen just face-to-face. It doesn't have to happen in a cold outreach. It can happen between actions between one point solution and the other that can create some really, really cool stuff. Robert, AI is a great tool for generating marketing materials quickly. Once we review and edit, we have saved hours of copywriting time. It's not perfect, but it helps expedite the process. Absolutely, Robert. I will tell you, when you say it's not perfect, we're again, the thing that, just like in leadership, if I brought in another human individual into my organization and I was like, create some marketing materials, right? And hopefully they're great, and they're bringing with them a culture of all of the things that they worked on in the past, the priorities that those people that led them had, and they're bringing that to your conversation, right? That's data, technically, right? Leadership debt, right? So they're bringing that to you, and you say, hey, go make me a flyer for an apartment building in Scottsdale. And they'll come back probably the right photo, probably the right location, maybe the right message, maybe the right market. And it'll be pretty good, right? Pretty good. And that's where AI, like you mentioned, Robert, it's going to save you time, and it's going to save you, and it's going to get you there faster. But I can tell you that it still requires the right messaging. You still need to know the emotional buyer, the logical buyer. It's going to change the way copywriting is done, but it's not, and it will replace a lot of average copywriters. But at some point, everybody's going to be going faster and pointing out more news because it's quick and fast. how you differentiate is when you get your own company data and you really understand your profile of your avatar of your customer and what their pain points are and who you're going after and what a bigger and better desire looks like for them, like a perfect scenario, and getting into that to prompt and structure in context. Because if you're using ChatGPT right now, you're not using the full potential of OpenAI or generative AI. And the reason why is, ChatGPT is really nothing more than a user interface to interact with the API, but you're interacting at the user level. So it's taking user prompts and it's basically taking that field and it's then writing to the API in what was known as the completion API, which just means it's conversational and you're not getting system level prompts, you're not getting API role prompts in there. And so I think that will evolve and it will get better, but you're still in an ecosystem and you're still in a action that you have to take to make that happen. And then when you make the marketing materials and those types of things, it's really dependent on how good you are at understanding how to guide and organize those prompts. And I'm going to go through specifically what I mean by that at the webinar. So, all right. So let's see. Did any of that make any sense? Look, this is just me getting online and hanging out with you guys, right? So I have a webinar coming up Friday. Many of you that are on my email list probably got the email or are getting it today. We already have registrations coming. It's going to be a fun time just to really show and tell, not just discuss this. But what I wanted to do today is get a sense of how you're thinking about it. So by the time I have that webinar, guess what I have? Data. I have unique pains and opportunities that maybe customers are going through. So when I do my thing, I'll have a better outcome when I do that. I can talk technical and I could talk business case. You tell me, which way should we go? Should we go more technical? Because there's some material differences that are happening right now that you will want to make sure that the people you're spending time with understand and that they have a plan to handle the AI in a way that makes sense for your business. So let me know, would you rather see technical around what's changed since even November with ChatGPT, or would you rather see more business case? I'd love to hear from you. In the meantime, I'll go to your questions here. Perfect sense, yes, and thank you. Thank you, Larry. Anybody else that has anything? I always think about, so right now I'm asking you to think about, are we going to go down the business or are we talking about the technical? Which would you rather understand? All right. When use case I'm working on right now is using AI to create engaging data, visualizations, i.e. graphs, charts, and raw data. Ideally, AI discern the simplest and most engaging method of displaying the data. Yes. And so you're probably using code. So the analyzing data and how you present and move forward with, maybe it's you're getting funding for something or illustrating a product opportunity, whatever that may be. But again, where that data is collected and how that data is structured. The good news is it doesn't always need to be structured now, which is exciting. Business case. All right. Business case. What are you thinking are the business cases? Who's using generative AI now as part? We got a couple of good examples here. What are some of the business cases that you'd like to tackle? Now, let me give you something to think about. As you think about these business cases, I want you to just think about, number one, where do you do work outside, like let's say you're a property management system where Work is redundant. You may have to move data from system A to system B, or you are summarizing data, or you're sharing a report, or there is an error happening. Think about that. We'll talk a little bit about some of those business cases. You got to think about what's the let's talk about the problem we're solving, right? Not like we're in search for how to use something. Let's talk about what is the problem that we want to solve, okay? Oh, so let's see, prompts, how to use prompts to, is there a dot, dot, dot there, or am I not seeing it all? Let me make sure I got everything here. Oh, I can see the comments better here. Thank you guys. We're up on track. All right, so let me see. How do we utilize old school keywords and integrate them in with AI specifically directed towards decision makers to get a shot at their business? So it sounds like that's more like a cold outreach thing. Now, I will tell you on the webinar, if you go to that, number one, it's free, and we do have a replay. If you, for whatever reason, it's live. If you can't make it that time, there will be a replay. I will go through that, and I'm going to talk through it here to answer your question, but I will demonstrate that at the webinar. And what that means is we do this often. So, and I talked about this in a previous live, which was the 5-step system for trust and credibility. And the first step was signal. And a lot of people go to the thing they want to say, and they don't get the who they want to say it to right. And so, to your point, when you say keywords, I think what you're saying is like things that the people you want to spend time with care about. Maybe give me a little yes or no if that's the right direction I'm going. But I will address the question the way I believe I'm understanding it, and that is, if you're wanting to use data that you have around certain keywords, around the offers that you may have, one of the things that you can do is in the way that we structure at the API level programmatically. So we're not doing these things inside ChatGPT because we're not training the large language models. And I know you can opt out for that, but we're talking with the API, so it's on the private data side, which is very important to understand. And what we're doing is we're getting very clear about who our target audience is. Okay. And the target audience is like, if you had 10 more of your most amazing clients, the people that like call you, are fun to talk to, they pay the highest price for your service, right? They refer other customers. They're great customers to work with. And if you had 10 more of those, like, business would be remarkable. That's your avatar for this one customer, right? So what we're doing there is we're getting very clear, and we're telling, when we're writing and we're prompting in the agents that we create that are custom for the thing that we're solving for. So if I'm creating a cold outreach agent, this is kind of how I'm doing it. Or if I want to write an article to pull in the kind of audience I want, this is how I would do it. I'm looking at who is the message for, and I'm really specific about that, right? Multifamily owners and operators who have, 3,000 units, whatever the thing is, right? Who you're going after. And then what I'm looking at, and I'm creating variables at the API level to allow for this to happen inside a workflow, but basically process any response with this without needing to do it every time. And what I'm doing is I'm going to then take the pains. What does this ideal client I have really struggle with? Now, those may be what you're talking about with keywords. And that's where I'm going with this. So you may be looking at, like, look at your customers that you've made big impact with before they got into your world and became a customer and a client. What was their problem that they had before they called you? Like the other customer did this and it didn't follow up, or whatever that may be. You know, you're looking at the pain points of the customer and you're describing those. And you really are describing these. You're describing like they've tried this and it didn't work. If I'm trying to read a multifamily executive, it's like they're constantly considering new technology, and oftentimes the technology they've already invested in didn't work, or didn't or ran flat, or didn't get the resources that they need. So those are kind of the key. Like I'm bringing beyond just keywords. I'm bringing in language to the emotional and logical human I'm trying to draw in. So keywords are like the internet, which was categorized like finding documents. Keywords are for finding documents. We're talking about connecting with people here. It's a conversational thing. So you have to not use keywords. You want to use who do you want to attract? What are the pain points that the customer that you want have, right? And so really doing that, and then also describing the the desires that your ideal customer would want. Like if I were looking for a renter, right? It would be their pain points would be it's hard to find an apartment. You never know when you're approved. They have to log into or apply, and they're applying for an apartment they don't even know if they qualify for. They are, these are the things I'm training AI on, right? So when it writes, it knows like, man, these are the emotions the people I'm going to write this piece for are. And then I talk about what I want out of that. It's like the customer just really wants a place to live. They want a fair price, and they want to have great neighbors, great friends, and maybe they want Wi-Fi and these other things. But that's really what I'm doing with the keywords. I'm doing more than just what we did to index on a blog article or those types of things. Anyway, that was Mark. Let me know if that was close to an answer, or was that helpful in my response to your question. Robert, let's see. Do CRM better? Sorry, I'm walking. Do CRM better? Oh, ... Do CRM better? And let me think. I think he's catching up from another comment. Let me see here. Okay, let me go back to Mark's question, earlier question. How do we rein in AI and use it to hyper-focus effectively in our market segments? I think it's going to come back down to your vision planning, right? Like what do you want to do, right? And getting specific about that, and then working backwards and talking. Like there's so many different ways you can do that. I'm not talking about prompting ChatGPT. I'm talking about the unlocking real value in a business where AI is, when you send an email, it goes from one inbox up to the internet, to the satellites, and back down to the other. I'm talking about the things that happen automatically, where if you have AI in between those things, you can do some pretty incredible things. So let's see. Any other? I'm going to ask you guys a question. Oh, you know what? I'm on the. No, I'm on the. Okay, I'm going to ask you guys a question. How do you think AI will impact your current role? And it doesn't matter if you're on site or you're at the executive role. What are your thoughts around that? I would love to offer some commentary on that too, because there's a lot of, when just like when marketing, a confused buyer never converts. When people are unsure and uncertain and just not knowing how to move through something, it can really impact productivity and engagement in an organization. I'm just curious, what do you think how your role. I'd love to know what your role is, but how you think it's going to impact your work, and how do you see it? Jason says, force multiplier. Absolutely. How often are you using generative AI on a daily basis? I'd be curious to know what that is. Um, I think in the early days, there's a lot of all day, every day. Says, I appreciate it. In the early days of cloud architecture is essentially what we're going through now, where people are trying to understand. They've always had documents in one place, and they're moving it to where is it, and the security and all that type of thing. So there's a natural trend when new shifts and new change occurs. All right, Jason. So he says tenant screening, copywriting, contract review, and marketing. Very interesting. Jason, I would love for you to join the webinar. I'm not sure if you have plans on Friday, but I'm gonna put in the link. And I know some of you are on mobile. And you're like, wait a minute, I'm on my phone. How am I going to scan that? Some of you are at the desk, probably at home, and can scan it. I'll leave it up for that. But you can get it there, and I'll if you want to just message me. If you don't, I'll give you the link later. It's not a problem. You have some time to register. It's not until Friday. But let's see. All right, cool. So the review, there are some really compelling things. How would you like to be able to talk to your documents? Would that be cool? Your private data? I'll be there. All right, cool. You'll have to say hi in the chat when we're there. It'll be different. It'll be more of a private thing. This is more public. But we will be sharing the screen and giving you specific examples. And I think on the page I go over, I'm going to stay focused on some use cases. The thing is with all of this, once you realize the potential, you see the business differently. And you see it differently because you know different ways to bring value to a business process. Right? It's about bringing value to the business process. And when you can do that, again, how valuable are you, right? It used to be that we needed to know everything and know all of our knowledge in our heads and study it. It was, we learned just in case. I need to get a degree and a certification, all this stuff, just in case I need to know this. And now it's just in time. And I'm going to show you at the webinar some really cool just in time cases to where, let's say, you're on a phone call and negotiating a deal, and you just need to know the maturity date of a loan. What's your process right now? Do you have loan abstracts? Did you pay a consultant or an employee to go into the loans, create abstracts? And where is it now? What drive is it in? Who is it updated? Is it accurate? All of that. Imagine a world where you can just ask a question, and guess what? You have your loan maturity date. Right? Those things are here right now. At the webinar, how do you come up with interview questions? How many people are hiring people over and over and have to come up with questions for those job candidates, or you're in charge of hiring for the organization, but the way that the current process works is at some point there's some preliminary review, and we kind of like the candidate, and then there's the on-site individual that really is not an HR professional, is now asking questions like, how do you help them ask those questions? Are you using anything to support that process? Also, is there a process right now that is complex, takes a lot of time, multiple people are involved, data is moving from system A to system B, where if you had it automated, you could look at the data differently, or you could spend more time on sales call, whatever that may be. Tell me in the comments, what would that be for you? I'd love to know. If I don't get any more comments, what I want to do is I want to do some positioning around to set up for the webinar around the difference between generative AI being unlocked inside a business workflow versus going to like a chat GPT and talking, prompting and getting responses and managing that. I'd love to kind of set you guys up for that. So if you're tuning in, I'm curious to hear. And one of the things I do is when we go in, we don't ask like, what do you want to automate? People don't know what's possible because they haven't seen it yet. And that's one of the reasons why we're showing the webinar, is we want to show that in many cases, errors are made more and harder to track when we're tired, when we're rushed, when we're distracted, when we're hungry, when we leave and now we start a new role and now the new person, like all of the efficiency around the pain and frustration around learning a new process, when you can document it and have a trail to know where the work got done, then automation is a marvelous thing. Right now, you're not seeing it. You're just knowing like it's happening. It's kind of like when you come to an intersection, it disappears when technology works well. It just disappears, right? And that's another thing to note, is like it should disappear if it's working well. All right, I want to talk a little bit about the assistance API. So there was, when we first heard about ChatGPT, there was what's called a completion API, and the completion API is, as we know it, is it's doing completions for us, right? It's conversational. And what would have to happen before the completion API, there was certain limits to amount of information we could prompt it with, and it would time out, and all these different things, and it didn't run a lot. And there were some plugins and some evolutions around different ways to do code interpreting and things like that. But more so, the developers, when we're doing really interesting things at the automation level, programmatically at the API, you can prompt it with different programs, right? So not programs, but different at the system level, we can prompt it with different ways to interact with us. And then at the role level, we can prompt. And then we have the user level. And at the completion API allowed for developers to structure that so that you get better responses. And that was good. And it was a lot of resources used to manage the conversations and sort of, take what the user responded with and the output of the completion, and then in the next return of that response to, you're essentially in code layering those threads, so then you don't have an overflow on the tokens that go into a prompt. Because if you're going back and forth, you've got to kind of crunch that, summarize, and and do some stuff. So developers were spending a lot of time and energy doing that programmatically in the background. And that was a lot of resources. And then if you had large data, private data, things like that, you had to convert that into a language that computers can understand, so it can be read and retrieved. It was called RAG, which is retrieval augmented generation. So that meant like I'm going to use the large language model for the engine, right? But I'm going to use the company data for context, so that we know that the large language models can summarize and write and do great things. But in context to the company data, that's where the difference makes, right? And so all that was done manually. Recently, the Assistance API was announced at Developer Day way back last year in November. And it really unlocked a complete transformative way to unlock automation inside a business workflow. So what I'm now taking you to is away from ChatGPT's marketplace and their conversational experience, but to where in the background, the products that you're working with, if they can unlock this type of technology efficiently, then you're going to experience amazing automations in your business. Now, you may not be thinking about what's possible yet because you haven't seen it. I'm going to show you at the webinar what this really means and how it plays out. But essentially what's new now is they've taken all that vectoring of data and storing of data. You would have to manually kind of crunch and split text and then turn it into vectors and store it on, like Pinecone or some other application that it could then be retrieved when you call upon it, right? So when you want to do a response, you're calling upon your private data. You don't want to be calling upon data you're putting out there to, the large language model in a sort of open network. So developers would have to do this at scale, right? So now with the Assistance API, they made that very easy. It automatically does many of those things. Now, there are some limitations to that, so many files. But at the core of it, what happens is you have what they call agents, right? So the assistant itself. So the conversations are different than just like chat. It's more like they're running these they're running a process, and in that process, you can have an agent that will then ultimately create a thread. Will create a thread, right? And in that thread is where these conversations happen, and they can be tracked. So anytime you start a message with an assistant, we create a thread ID. That thread ID can be stored so it can remember, like I would with you, I could remember what we talked about. So when I come back to the situation, I can pick up where we left off, and I don't need to bring the whole conversation with me, right? I don't need to repackage everything. So the way it works, you have essentially an agent, right? And we're building multifamily GPT agents, like people that can analyze loan documents, summarize data, recruiters, training employees, things like that. You can train these agents specifically on what is required of the role for your company, not for everybody else to see, for your company. You can have one of these for your company, right? So someone that wants to write press releases, or someone that is good at social media marketing. So when you have to do a prompt to a social media post, you call upon your agent that knows how to do that, right? That's the way the agent works. And what happens with the agent is the agent creates these threads, right? So now the agents will drive the conversations that are hosted and nested inside these threads. It's like a container, right? So the user will respond and the agent will respond, and there'll be a conversation. It'll all be hosted in this thread. And it's packaged in such a way that, we've developed some technology to allow this to happen very easily for companies. And we're going to show that on the webinar. But the reality is you can train these things to do other things, right? So it can run functions like get other information. And this is where these agents can be scripted to run APIs to other other programs and other workflows in the business. So anyway, it's exciting to go through. I'm not going to wear you guys out because there's a lot of ways this matters to the business that I don't think people are thinking about. And what I mean by that is the ability to understand what the organization really needs in an environment where costs are continually rising is a great skill to be able to go in and help an organization create some efficiencies. And knowing how and what's possible within the process of this is what we've been saying is dual bilingual, which is you need to know how you do your work, but the real value is going to be unlocked when you know what's possible with technology. And just the tech person can't do it. The engineers, it's not enough just to be an engineer in tech. You have to collide the two of those to understand a really good business use case. So I think there's some real opportunities for those that have developed a lot of experience in the business, and they're watching work get done. And when you know how the technology functions and what's possible with the technology, you can kind of see behind the scenes. Then when you watch work get done, you will realize like that work doesn't have to go like that anymore, right? That work does not have to go like that anymore. I do this with my team all the time. They'll tell me, here's what I have to do, this, and then log into this, and then do this, and then I have to do this, and then email it to them and get them to answer it, and then do that. And I just make them draw it out. In some cases, I just ask questions to draw it out of them. Well, what happens when you do that? Okay, and if they don't respond, then what happens? Well, then I have to, and you start extracting the logic from work, and now you can automate that work so that it gets done with less errors. You can see the actions through automations, and you can create value to where all of a sudden someone's like, man, we can do more now because we don't have to wait for this logic to happen manually. So I'm going to leave it here unless you guys have questions. Anybody have any questions before I wrap? I have this webinar coming up on Friday. Would love to see you there. I know we've got a lot of people registered already, but we do have some time and some seats left. This is an opportunity for you to get to know a little bit about what's possible and see it in action around how to bring AI and automation into the multifamily business and leverage something to where now you're not just learning and reading about it, but you are seeing it happen. We're going to do some live demos, and you'll be able to ask some questions and go from there. I'm going to leave our chat open for a minute here, but if you have any thoughts or any questions, I'm happy to take those with you guys. What is it, Monday, and we're already live with you, just hanging out, talking about, I think, where everything is going. And this is, as I opened up the show, early days of what's really possible. And the real value will be unlocked with your ability to understand how to do something with it, turn it into action, and make real business value for the organization. So I'm going to hang out with you guys for a minute, but who has a question? If not, then I'll wrap it up, and then we'll see you guys on the next one. All right, I'm going to leave it at that, and we will be back at you. In the meantime, click the QR code in the screen there, and we'll see you guys at the webinar on the next one. Take care.